Turron Davenport from the USA Today Eagles Wire, as the Eagles coming off of not a surprising loss. I mean, obviously, many people thought they were going to lose that game going to Seattle, but what does that mean for their season going forward? And there's a lot of frustration from the Eagles all of a sudden. The defensive side of the ball, Malcolm Jenkins expressing some frustration that the offense can't line up right. We've heard Malcolm make some suggestions that he doesn't care for some of the offense's plays the last couple of weeks there. You've also got the wide receiver situation, and I know we'll dive into that with Turron right now as he joins us on the Sports Bash 97.3 ESPN. Welcome back, Turron. How are you?
Oh, I'm doing well, man. If I'd have known you guys were at Chickies and Pete's, I'd have came by for some crab fries and a couple Stellas, man.
We'll make sure that we let you know the next time we're on location. But, hey, you know that the wide receiver spot, we talk about it seemingly every single week, but this week's a little different. Give us your sense of what the future holds for Nelson Agholor now, where he has now come out and admitted that he's having some mental challenges in terms of catching the football. Doug's side of the story yesterday, do you think we'll see Nelson Agholor Monday night?
I think he'll still play, and I think what you have to do with him is get him some easy catches early in the game. It's something that a lot of teams had to do when they had Terrell Owens. They had to do it with Randy Moss. They had to do it with Chad Johnson. A lot of the receivers that are different from Nelson Agholor as far as psychologically, they just had to get checked into the game early. I think for Agholor, getting him those early catches, easy screens, letting him catch the ball on quick hitches and things like that, allow him to get into the rhythm of the game and get that mental part going. I think that will help him tremendously just from a confidence side of things, because I think really what they have to do is help him not think so much about catching the football. And when you're doing that, that's how you drop it. The worst thing you could do is say, I got to catch this, I can't drop it. You just have to let it happen, and that's not what's going on with Nelson. It's totally a mental issue. If you watch him, his ability is there. You look at that route that he ran against Richard Sherman. He stemmed it inside beautifully at the top of the route, gave him a move outside before cutting across the middle. It was a beautiful route. He beat one of the best cover corners on that route, but he just didn't finish the play by catching the football, and that's the thing that has to come most naturally, and unfortunately right now that's not the case.
Turron, you look at this receiving core late in the game, and it was garbage time, and they were garbage stats, but they tried to maybe see if they have something in GreenBeckham. I mean, he had a couple catches. He ends up with the touchdown. Was that their way of saying, look, we're going to give you an opportunity, grab it, and if you do, we'll give you more time? Do you expect, especially this week against a pretty bad Packers secondary, do you expect to see more of Beckham, based on the garbage time that he did produce in?
I think what it showed was where his specialty is, and this is something that I've talked about with him and to him since he's gotten to Philadelphia, and he's at his best when he's working in breaking routes, going across the middle on dagger routes, on slants, on digs, and they have a combo where they have Jordan Matthews from the slot position run that seam route to pull the safety, and he's running a dig underneath, and that's something that they'll continue to use. He is a guy that, you would, with his size, you would like to see him make plays down the field, but let's face it, he's at his best going across the middle. That's what they're going to continue to work with him at. John, you've seen multiple times, we've talked to GreenBeckham, and when you mention the slant, it's just a different thing. He smiles about that because he loves that route. So he's most at home working across the middle. That's what they need to do, and I think that's what they'll continue to do.
Yeah, you mentioned Turron, and this Green Bay team is so banged up in the secondary. If this receiving group is going to get on track, there's no better week to do it than against the Packers on Monday night. You mentioned with Nelson, it's clearly mental, and I agree with you. I thought the Eagles reached a little bit for him in the first round, but even if you stipulate that, everybody in this league thought he was a late first, early second round pick. So if you don't have the mental fortitude to sort of take the criticism? At what point do we look at that and say, maybe he's not going to be able to get over the hump if he can't handle that aspect of the game?
Well, let's look at it this way. The greatest wide receiver ever did not handle criticism early, and he actually considered quitting. In his second year, he really came into his own. Now, obviously, Agholor is in his second year, but Jerry Rice struggled initially. You know, you look at these guys that they're going up against this week. Jordy Nelson was not a Pro Bowler in his first 2 seasons, first 3 for that matter. At certain cases, guys just develop differently. And I think Jordan Matthews made an excellent point when we talked to him after the game, and he said that maybe the first-round label is a really bad thing for Nelson because it's not allowing him to develop the way Nelson develops. We get so caught up. Odell Beckham Jr., Brandon Cooks, all of these guys, these younger guys in their first season or second season, they come in and they do so well. We expect every receiver to do that. But this is a position that takes a lot of transitioning. There are times where you're going against a corner that is going to press you on every snap. You're not getting the free release that you got every time in college. So it's an adjustment for any receiver, and some guys make that adjustment better than others. And that's really what we're seeing with Agholor. I again, believe 100% he is fully capable of excelling in this league. I don't have any question about his athleticism. In fact, as far as, getting upfield once he catches the football, he's, in my book, one of the better guys that does that. But he has to catch the football, and that's where the major issue is, catching the football, and, again, not letting the game come naturally to him. I'm not ready to call him a bust. I think that there's still potential there. Now, a lot of coaches will say, your potential is going to get me fired. But at the same time, I think that he still is a guy that they can continue to develop. And when it clicks, it's going to really hit, and he's going to be an outstanding player.
Turron Davenport, USA Today's Eagles Wire. Turron, let's talk about the other aspect of that passing game, and that's Carson Wentz. Again, after the great start, 3-0, described as the second coming by many. He's taken a major step backwards, especially playing on the road. He had a career-low passer rating. Obviously, it's a tough environment. Seattle, maybe the toughest in pro football. What did you see from the rookie quarterback against the Seahawks?
Well, you look at some of the plays. His 2 interceptions, especially, were bad plays. And, again, we always try to, it's a rookie, he was just trying. No, it was a bad throw on both occasions. You look at that throw to Doyle GreenBeckham, he stared down the receiver. He didn't bother to look off the safety. Cam Chancellor read his eyes looking to the left, and came from the middle of the field from that hash and made that interception there. That was a bad throw, and it was off target, because had Chancellor not been there, it would have been an overthrow of a 6'5" wide receiver. These are problems that he cannot continue to have. He needs to step to his target. Doug Peterson has spoken about it so much this season, about his stepping to his target and making his target zone correct, and it's not happening. So that's an area that he has to adjust. The deep ball that he threw to Bryce Treggs that was intercepted. Now, you have to know the personnel that's on the field, right? You have Earl Thomas, one of the most rangy safeties in the NFL, and Richard Sherman, one of the best corners. You don't throw into double coverage when both of them are there. He did it anyway. He admitted after the game that he should have checked it down. Now, everybody's going to say, Bryce Treggs should have ran. He stopped running. And no, it should never have been thrown. That was a bad play. So there are times where, those mistakes, those flaws come to light. But overall, I think he played decently, but, this is pretty much what we're starting to see from Carson Wentz, inaccuracy across the middle and sometimes taking too many risks. And the Brett Favre comparisons, it's high risk. You're going to get a high reward, but at the same time, right now, they're not getting the reward because he's throwing interceptions down the field.
Turron, what was your takeaway on the running game in the Seattle loss? Because I know they did lose a couple guys. Ryan Matthews leaves with a knee injury. Darren Sproles, the rib. But at one point, and Mike and I talked about this on yesterday's show, they seemed to be running the ball to the left fairly effectively and then maybe got away from that. What was your takeaway on the running game?
Yeah, they're running the ball effectively to the left side. They're able to get downhill and even, run the ball inside as well. They did it to the right also. And I think that the running game is something that they're beginning to stick to, which is necessary. And I tell you, Wendell Smallwood, continue to give him the rock. 13 carries, 47 yards or something along those lines. That's not bad against Seattle. You look at that team and what they're able to do against the run with Bobby Wagner, KJ Wright, Chancellor. So I think they need to stick to the run, continue to be a run-centric football team, work the play action because those are easy, high-low reads for Carson Wentz. So that way you allow him to get into his rhythm also. And by doing that, that will make everything better on the offensive side of things. But Wendell Smallwood needs to get more touches. They targeted him, I believe it was 5 times, and he caught 4 of those targets. So you're seeing him catch the ball out the backfield, too.
And for that game to be effective, they need help on the offensive line. I mean, was there a position Alan Barber didn't play in that game? They certainly got tested on their offensive line. What did you think how the O-line held up against the Seahawks?
Well, I think they did a really good job, all things being considered. They had a couple changes with Barber switching the right tackle and Wisniewski coming in. And I think the value of a guy like Wisniewski and Barber especially that could play so many positions, I think that came to light, because he actually played some left tackle too with Matt Tobin not being active. So it was, I think the versatility really showed, and it's a reinforcing kind of thing when you look at that offensive line, but we just have to see what happens with Vaitai. I mean, he's week to week now with the MCL sprain. And again, this is an athletic offensive lineman, so he kind of prides himself on being able to move well, and we'll have to see how well he could do that with the MCL sprain.
Turron Davenport, USA Today, Eagles Wire. A lot of things going into this Packers game that should be interesting. We should find out more because after Thanksgiving, this is the jumping off point. Who's in and who's for real here? And one thing is for sure, the Eagles still have a lot of questions as we hit Thanksgiving here and their wide receiver spot we talked about. But I do want to ask real fast. So many fans ask about Paul Turner. He might be active. As a guy who knows that position pretty well, saw him in training camp, do you think he helps at all? Does he add anything, or is he a guy that just the fans get excited about?
Well, I mean, he has a sure-handed wide receiver that could work the middle of the field from the slot position. He's obviously not the fastest guy, but he has really good lateral quickness. And he's someone that you could work the quick slants to and know he's going to catch the football. I don't recall seeing him drop maybe two drops throughout all of training camp. So he's easily their most sure-handed receiver. Now, how that transfers to actual games is going to be a whole thing that we'll have to see. But if he gets opportunities, I think he'll make plays. A lot of people don't realize that he was at LSU with Odell Beckham Jr. and Jarvis Landry for a period and then transferred back home. Closer to home because his grandmother was sick, so he wanted to be there, and that's where he did his thing at Louisiana Tech. And I tell you, there's a lot of ability when you look at Paul Turner. He's not the biggest guy, but like I say, he's very shifty. He understands the position. He's someone who has some return ability, so you could do different things to get him the football in space to take advantage of that ability to carry the football, make people miss. So we'll see what happens there. It's just, knowing Doug Peterson, they'll probably use him somewhat along the lines that they use Josh Huff as far as bubble screens, working the jet sweeps from time to time as well.
Turron, you see, as you wrote about, the frustration. You got a guy like Malcolm Jenkins who's, regarded as a leader on this team. At this stage of the year, when we're trying to figure out who's pretenders and who's contenders, you lose a game like that, the way, that touchdown gets called back and then the guy has a drop. And, are you starting to see that frustration that kind of indicates that this team could be more pretender than contender?
No, I don't really see that frustration. I mean, think about it. That play was a 14-point swing. I mean, they ended up having to punt 2 plays later and Seattle was able to drive down the field and kick the field goal after 2 big throws, one to Baldwin and one to Tyler Lockett. But had that play not been called back, they take the lead. And now that crowd is out of it, right? And then all of a sudden the defense is able to feed off of that energy because each unit, there's so much they rely on each other so much as far as like feeding off of each other. And that was deflating to see that play get called back. So I understand the frustration. At the same time, you have to remember that was a tough loss. It was an emotion. That was the worst beatdown those guys suffered this whole season. The Redskins game, maybe along those lines. But I think that was just a beatdown that they suffered. And it's an emotional game. You put a microphone in somebody's face and you ask them specifically about one of the major things that caused the negative emotion, they're going to react. And that's pretty much what you got from Malcolm Jenkins. I don't think it's a thing as far as finger pointing or anybody, being too frustrated and anything coming apart at the seams. I think Doug Peterson and the coaching staff, I think they're good enough as far as leaders are concerned to be able to keep that from happening. And the ultimate medicine for them this week is the Packers. Obviously, Aaron Rodgers is Aaron Rodgers, but they're banged up, and especially at the running back side of things. So there's an opportunity for them to bounce back.
Turron, were you disappointed in the defense against the Seattle? Because going into the game, people had talked about the Eagles' defense maybe being on the same level as the Seattle defense, and I think the numbers might not have borne that out. Were you disappointed in the defensive effort the Eagles gave against Seattle?
Well, yeah, when you look at the numbers, though, you have to look beyond that and look at some of the turnovers. You have to look at the inept ability, the ineptness on offense. They weren't able to move the ball. A lot of 3 and outs, turnover on downs, etc. So what I was disappointed specifically with that defense was Jalen Mills, actually. And you guys know Jalen Mills is one of the guys I really, I'm a big advocate for. But he had a bad game. There were multiple times where he was bailing out too much, and they would break down and work their way back to the quarterback. Tyler Lockett did it a couple times. And then the biggest blunder, he had 2 missed tackles, one for the 4-yard run, but then the other, that big 72-yarder, where C.J. Prosise got out into the open field, and he has to make that tackle. But Prosise broke him down, shook him, made him miss, and then he proceeded to outrun Rodney McLeod's angle. Fletcher Cox, if you guys watched the play, awesome effort by Fletcher Cox. He was able to, come back into the picture. I was really impressed with just the motor and the speed that he had to be that big. But, nevertheless, Mills was a disappointment in the game. I talked to him a little bit afterwards, and, he agreed. And there was a one play when Doug Baldwin, he ran a post route, a skinny post, and they were in quarters coverage, and Mills wasn't able to stay with him, and they made the catch. And then that was the one 2 plays later, Lockett made the catch to get him to like the 3-yard line. So Mills definitely needs to bounce back this week. Defensively, I think they have to be able to bring the quarterback down. That's something that, Russell Wilson is an escape artist, and there were multiple times where he was able to break free of would-be sacks and throw the ball downfield and make big plays. Look at the Jimmy Graham touchdown. So if there were areas of improvement, it would be those. You look at the running game, they were able to pretty much keep that contained. The passing game, again, going back to not sticking with the receivers, and that was their shortcoming.
Yeah, Turron, good point with Fletcher, because I don't think people realize how fast C.J. Prosise is, and Fletcher was giving him a run for his money. He had to keep going. He wasn't going to give up. But, this defense as a whole, to me, I look at the core group, and specifically this season, it's been Fletcher and Brandon Graham up front, who's playing at an all-pro level. Jordan Hicks at middle linebacker has been tremendous, especially in pass coverage. If this defense can really lock down the cornerback position and improve there, it does have a chance to be a legit top 5 D. Do you agree with that?
Oh, I agree with that 100%, and I would add Nigel Bradham to that mix, because Nigel Bradham has quietly been a very good linebacker for them. He actually had the hit on Prosise that knocked him out. He's played really well, but you look at corners, there are some guys that they could grab, whether it be free agency, Stephon Gilmore. I think DJ Hayden will be a low-cost guy that could come in and play. But I tell you, when I was out there, I went to Washington versus Arizona State, and I pretty much focused that whole game, obviously on John Ross, the receiver, but I watched Sidney Jones a lot, and just seeing him in person. And there were a couple plays where they took shots down the field, and just watching his footwork, how he was able to move with the receivers, he's always in phase. You rarely see him out of position. So Sidney Jones, I think if they could get their hands on a guy like that, he reminds me of Kevin Johnson, if you remember him from Wake Forest, that went to the Houston Texans in the first round last year. He reminds me of him, just a smaller but tough man corner that could come up and make plays against the run. I think he would be an ultimate pick for them to pick up. So you're right. They're just a cornerback away, somebody that could lock down receivers, and you bring somebody like Sidney Jones in, I think that would help a lot.
Turron Davenport, USA Today, Eagles Wire. Eagles and the Packers on Monday night. And, that should be an interesting one. The Packers giving up a lot of points. It's not their offense that's been struggling, so the Eagles' defense is going to have to be a big factor into the game. They still score about 25 points a game, but their defense has been horrible. And we'll be recapping that game next Tuesday here on the Sports Bash. Turron Davenport over at USA Today, breaking down everything that happened in that loss. Moving forward now as the Eagles get ready to take on the Green Bay Packers. Turron, happy Thanksgiving to you, and we always appreciate all your time, man.
No problem. You guys have a great holiday, and we'll see you tomorrow at the facility, John.